The galaxy had only one rule. When the Sarn Dominion arrived, everyone surrendered. For over 12,000 years, no civilization had ever survived their first contact. Their fleets were too large. Their weapons were too powerful. Their emperor had never lost a single campaign. Entire star systems disappeared after refusing his command. The survivors called him the Emperor of Silence, because every invasion began the same way. Exactly 1 hour. One message. One choice. Kneel or disappear. And no one had ever allowed that hour to reach zero. Admiral Kale Varys stood silently on the bridge of the Imperial flagship. The giant observation window filled his vision with a small blue planet floating peacefully beneath the stars. It looked harmless. Green forests, blue oceans, white clouds. Nothing about it looked capable of challenging the greatest empire in galactic history. Around him, hundreds of officers worked with calm confidence. Some monitored orbital weapons powerful enough to crack continents. Others tracked thousands of troop carriers waiting for the invasion order. No one looked nervous. Why would they? This was supposed to be another routine conquest. Another world. Another surrender. Another victory. At the center of the bridge stood Emperor Vactheron himself. Nearly 3 meters tall. His black armor reflected the cold light of the command room. Across his chest rested 12 glowing medals. Each one represented a civilization that had once ruled the stars. Before the Dominion erased them, the Emperor slowly looked at Earth. His expression never changed. Begin the silent hour. Immediately, every communication satellite around Earth lit up. Television stopped. Radio stations went silent. Military frequencies were overridden. Even civilian phones suddenly displayed the same symbol. A silver crown surrounded by burning stars. Then the Emperor's voice echoed across the entire planet. People of Earth. I am Emperor Vactheron of the Sarn Dominion. For thousands of years, we have brought order to the galaxy. You have exactly 1 hour. Surrender peacefully, and humanity will become part of our empire. Refuse, and your civilization ends today. The countdown begins now. Every clock on Earth changed instantly. 59:59. 59:58. 59:57. The countdown had begun. Across the Imperial Bridge. Silence. The officers smiled. Most civilizations answered within 5 minutes. Some begged immediately. Others tried negotiating. Many surrendered before the message even finished. No one had ever stayed silent for long. Admiral Kale opened Earth's communication channels. Thousands of frequencies filled his display. Military satellites. Civilian broadcasts. Government networks. Emergency systems. He waited. 1 minute passed. Nothing. 2 minutes. Still nothing. No surrender. No threats. No desperate pleas. Only silence. One young officer laughed. They're frozen with fear. Another nodded confidently. They're probably arguing over who gets to surrender first. The bridge erupted with quiet amusement. Kale didn't laugh. Something felt wrong. He had spent the last 4 years secretly studying humanity. Unlike most Imperial officers, he had actually listened to human history. He knew about their world wars, their revolutions, their impossible recoveries. Humans argued constantly. They disagreed about almost everything. But whenever an outsider threatened their planet, history showed something strange. They stopped fighting each other and started fighting together. Kale quietly opened an old human archive. One sentence appeared on his screen. Freedom is never given. It is defended. Another. If you want peace, prepare for war. Then another. Never mistake patience for weakness. Kale slowly closed the file. A cold feeling settled in his chest. 10 minutes passed. Still, no response. The Emperor finally spoke. Report. A communications officer bowed. My Emperor. Earth has acknowledged receiving our message. Vactheron's eyes narrowed. Then where is their answer? The officer hesitated. There isn't one. For the first time, The bridge became completely quiet. The Emperor slowly walked toward the observation window. Below them, Earth continued rotating peacefully. Cities remained illuminated. Satellites continued orbiting. Air traffic continued normally. There was no global panic, no mass evacuation, no military fleet rushing into formation. It almost looked as if humanity had expected this day. Vaktheron frowned. Magnify the orbital zone. The main display zoomed toward Earth's defensive fleet. Thousands, then tens of thousands, of human warships floated silently around the planet. Admiral Kale studied the tactical display. The number kept increasing. 5,000, 15,000, 30,000. Finally, 50,000 warships. Gasps spread across the bridge. One officer whispered, "Impossible." Another laughed nervously. "They're old ships. Half of them don't even have active reactors. Most aren't moving. They're bluffing." The Emperor smiled again. "A wall of scrap metal? They hope numbers alone will frighten us." Several officers laughed in agreement, but Kale kept staring. Something didn't match. 50,000 ships, yet almost no engine signatures. Almost no weapon activity. Almost no life signs. Why build the largest fleet in human history, only to leave it sleeping? His fingers raced across the scanner. Every result only made less sense. The ships were real. Their hulls were real. But it was almost as if they were waiting for something. Or someone. A junior sensor officer suddenly stood up. "My Emperor, I've detected a gravitational distortion." The bridge turned instantly. Location: not near Earth. Behind us. Kale's heart skipped. Behind them? There should have been nothing there except empty space. The officer looked confused. The signal disappeared. No. It moved. The tactical display flickered once. Then went completely blank. Every sensor on the flagship shut down simultaneously. Just for 1 second. When they came back online, nothing appeared different. The distortion had vanished. The Emperor dismissed it with a wave. A sensor malfunction. But Kale wasn't listening anymore. Because buried inside the restored data, one line had appeared for less than a heartbeat. Unknown mass detected. Signature lost. Kale stared at the words, then slowly looked back toward Earth. For the first time in Imperial history, he had the terrifying feeling that the Dominion was not the hunter. It had just walked willingly into someone else's battlefield. For 12,000 years, the Sarn Dominion had feared nothing. But in less than 20 minutes, that confidence had begun to crack. The bridge of the Imperial flagship had fallen strangely quiet. Every officer kept glancing toward the tactical display. The mysterious gravitational signal had vanished. No target. No explanation. No evidence. Only one man refused to ignore it. Admiral Kale. He replayed the sensor recording again. And again. And again. Each replay lasted less than a second. But every time, the same impossible result appeared. Something enormous had been there. Something large enough to bend space itself. It simply disappeared. Run a quantum scan. The sensor officer obeyed. Seconds later, she looked confused. "My Admiral, there is nothing." Kale frowned. "There has to be." She slowly shook her head. "It's as if whatever was there wanted us to see it." A chill ran through Kale's body. No civilization possessed technology capable of hiding an entire fleet from Dominion sensors. No civilization, except perhaps the one standing silently beneath them. Meanwhile, Earth remained completely calm. Cities stayed lit. Cargo ships crossed the oceans. Children walked to school. People filled restaurants. The Emperor watched the live images with growing annoyance. "They're pretending. They're trying to look fearless." Commander Zarek smiled. "My Emperor, give them another few minutes. The panic always comes." Vaktheron nodded. It always had. Every world eventually broke. Fear was universal. Or so the Dominion believed. 38 minutes remained. Still, not one surrender message. Not one military threat. Not one emergency broadcast. Only silence. Something unexpected happened. One transmission arrived. Not from Earth's government. Not from its military. Not even from one of the 50,000 warships. The signal appeared from everywhere. Every satellite. Every communication tower. Every relay station. One calm human voice spoke. We received your message. Nothing more. The bridge waited. The human voice continued. We are considering your offer. Several Dominion officers laughed. There it is. They're buying time. They're scared. But Kale noticed something. The speaker's heartbeat. Dominion translators automatically measured biological stress through voice patterns. Fear, panic, anxiety. The report appeared instantly. Stress level, normal. No fear. No hesitation. The human sounded almost bored. Vactheron stepped forward. Respond. Kale activated the transmission. This is Emperor Vactheron. You have 37 minutes remaining. The answer came immediately. We know. Silence. Nothing else. The channel closed. The Emperor slowly lowered his hand. For the first time in centuries, someone had ended a conversation with him. Not the other way around. Commander Zarek slammed his fist onto the console. Insolence. They're trying to provoke us. Vactheron remained calm. No. They're trying to understand us. Kale quietly looked toward the Emperor. That answer surprised him. Perhaps the Emperor had begun sensing it too. Something about humanity felt prepared. Suddenly, a warning alarm echoed across the bridge. Long-range sensor alert. The room froze. Another gravitational distortion. This time, 3 of them. One behind the Dominion fleet. One near Jupiter. One inside the asteroid belt. They appeared, then vanished. The officers stared at each other. Commander Zarek barked. Impossible. Nothing can move that fast. Kale wasn't so sure anymore. He enlarged the tactical map. A strange realization slowly formed. The distortions weren't random. They were closing in. Not directly. Carefully. Almost. Like wolves surrounding prey. Kale swallowed. My Emperor. I believe someone is maneuvering around us. The Emperor looked at him. You believe? Kale hesitated. I can't prove it. But if I'm right, then we're no longer surrounding Earth. They're surrounding us. The bridge became deathly silent. Vactheron stared at the tactical display. His expression remained calm. But his eyes had changed. For the first time, they weren't looking at Earth. They were looking into the darkness beyond it. 34 minutes remained. Then another report arrived. My Emperor. We've completed scans of the 50,000 human warships. Vactheron nodded. Report. The officer looked genuinely confused. Most of them have no crews. The bridge erupted with whispers. No crews. Impossible. They're drones. The officer continued. Negative. They're fully operational warships. But almost empty. Commander Zarek smiled proudly. A bluff. I knew it. They're using abandoned ships to appear stronger. The Emperor nodded slightly. It changes nothing. But Kale didn't believe that. Not anymore. If those ships weren't carrying humanity's soldiers, then where were they? Millions of trained personnel couldn't simply disappear. There should have been enormous life signs somewhere. Instead, there was nothing. Almost as if an entire civilization had vanished on purpose. Kale quietly opened one final classified sensor layer. One rarely used even inside the Dominion. Neutrino shadow mapping. It detected disturbances impossible to hide completely. The scan finished. Kale's blood ran cold. Tiny disturbances. Hundreds of them. Hidden throughout the asteroid belt. Near abandoned mining stations. Behind frozen moons. Inside drifting debris fields. Each one was too small to identify. But together, they formed something terrifying. A perfect circle. The Dominion fleet. Kale slowly whispered, My Emperor. I don't think those 50,000 ships are Earth's defense. Vaktheron looked toward him. Then what are they? Kale answered without taking his eyes off the screen. They're bait. The bridge fell silent. No one laughed this time. Because deep inside, every officer had begun asking the same terrifying question. If those 50,000 ships were only bait, then where was the real human fleet? The bridge remained silent. No one spoke after Admiral Kale's final words. They're bait. For the first time in 12,000 years, the officers of the Sarn Dominion were no longer discussing how to conquer a civilization. They were discussing whether they had already walked into a trap. Commander Zarek finally broke the silence. This is ridiculous. Humans don't possess technology capable of deceiving the Dominion. They're primitive. They've barely reached the edge of their own system. Several officers immediately agreed. It was comforting, familiar. The Dominion had believed the same thing about every civilization it had conquered. Kale looked at them quietly. They said the same thing about Earth before studying it. No one answered. The countdown continued. 28 minutes remained. Still said nothing. No threats. No speeches. No desperate negotiations. Just silence. The silence itself had become a weapon. Far below, deep beneath a mountain in northern Earth, thousands of men and women stood inside a command center that officially did not exist. There were no windows, no decorations, only enormous holographic star maps floating above the room. Every officer wore the same expression. Focused. Prepared. At the center stood an older man with silver hair. No medals. No grand uniform. Only a dark naval jacket with a small Earth emblem. This was Fleet Marshal Adrian Hayes, the man responsible for humanity's defense. One young officer looked toward him. Sir, their countdown has reached 28 minutes. Hayes nodded without looking up. Any civilian panic? The answer came immediately. Less than 1%. Another officer smiled. The evacuation plans finished 3 days ago. Every city is exactly where it should be. Hayes gave a small nod. Good. No celebration. No cheering. Only preparation. One officer hesitated. Sir, the Emperor expects us to answer. Hayes finally looked up. His blue eyes were calm. We already answered. The officer looked confused. We did. Hayes slowly pointed toward the tactical display. Our silence is the answer. Back aboard the Imperial flagship, confusion continued spreading. The Dominion intelligence network searched desperately. Every military base, every orbital station, every hidden moon, every communication relay. Nothing. Human fleet simply didn't exist. And yet, somehow, they felt surrounded. Suddenly, warning. Every tactical screen flashed red. Commander Zarek stood. Report. A sensor officer stared at her console. I've detected hundreds of new engine signatures. The bridge exploded into activity. Where? She looked terrified. I don't know. They're appearing everywhere. One display showed signals near Mars. Another near Saturn. Another beyond Pluto. Another outside the solar system itself. Every signature vanished again. Exactly 3 seconds later, Commander Zarek laughed. Electronic warfare. They're projecting fake readings. Kale slowly shook his head. No. If they're fake, why are all our sensors detecting the exact same thing? No one answered. The Emperor remained perfectly still. His eyes never left the tactical display. Finally, he spoke. Open the Imperial archives. An officer obeyed. Ancient records filled the main screen. Thousands of conquered civilizations. Thousands of victories. The Emperor searched for only one thing. Unknown enemy tactics. The result appeared almost instantly. Matches found, 0. Not once. In 12,000 years. Had another civilization used psychological warfare this effectively? Earth wasn't trying to destroy the Dominion. Not yet. It was destroying their certainty. 24 minutes remained. Then another transmission arrived. Again, it came from everywhere. The same calm human voice. You seem nervous. Several officers shouted in anger. How dare they? The Emperor raised one hand. Silence returned. He answered calmly. You mistake patience for fear. The human voice replied almost instantly. No. We learned patience. From history. The transmission ended. No name. No threats. No demands. Only another sentence. Designed to make them think. Commander Zarek growled. They're mocking us. Kale quietly whispered. No. They're measuring us. At that exact moment, Fleet Marshal Hayes looked across Earth's underground command center. A young intelligence analyst smiled. Sir. They've started scanning the outer asteroid belt. Hayes nodded. Exactly on schedule. Another officer asked, should we activate the fleet? Hayes looked at the countdown. 23:11. Not yet. They still believe they're hunting. A faint smile appeared on his face. They haven't realized. They're inside the cage. Back aboard the Imperial flagship, a deep alarm suddenly echoed across every deck. Not one. Not two. Hundreds of proximity alerts. Commander Zarek looked stunned. Impossible. No vessels have entered firing range. The tactical map filled with warning circles. But every time targeting systems locked on, the contacts disappeared, then reappeared somewhere else. Like ghosts, the Dominion fleet fired dozens of long-range sensor probes. Every probe transmitted the same result. Nothing. Empty space. Yet something kept triggering their systems. The officers began whispering. Some had started looking over their shoulders. Not because they saw an enemy, but because they couldn't. Kale finally understood. His face turned pale. My Emperor. I know what they're doing. The bridge became silent. The Emperor looked toward him. Kale spoke slowly. They're forcing us to doubt our own technology. If soldiers stop trusting their eyes, they stop trusting each other. Commander Zarek immediately objected. We are the Dominion. We don't panic. Kale looked directly at him. No. But we're beginning to hesitate. That single sentence silenced the entire bridge. Because everyone knew. It was true. Far beneath Earth, Fleet Marshal Hayes watched the enemy fleet through countless hidden satellites. He folded his hands behind his back. They've entered Phase 1. One officer asked quietly, and Phase 2, sir? Hayes looked at the countdown. 21:59. A calm smile crossed his face. When the hour ends, they'll finally see why those 50,000 ships were never meant to fight. The room became silent. Every officer understood. The real battle hadn't even started. The countdown continued. Every second echoed across the bridge of the Imperial flagship. 10 o'clock. 9 minutes. Then 8. No surrender. No warning. No movement from Earth. The silence had become unbearable. Commander Zarek finally lost his patience. My Emperor. They're insulting the Dominion. Allow me to destroy their orbital fleet before the countdown ends. Emperor Vaktheron never looked away from Earth. No. We gave them 1 hour. We keep our word. That was the law of the Dominion. An ultimatum was sacred. Not even the Emperor would break it. Deep beneath Earth, Fleet Marshal Adrian Hayes stood before the massive holographic map. The room was completely silent. Thousands of officers watched millions of moving symbols. Every human fleet, every satellite, every hidden station. Everything was already in position. A young lieutenant looked nervous. Sir, if they fire first, Hayes calmly answered. They won't. The lieutenant looked confused. How can you be sure? Hayes smiled. Because tyrants love being feared. They always wait for everyone to witness the execution. Back aboard the Imperial flagship, Kale quietly approached the Emperor. My Emperor, I respectfully request permission to withdraw the outer fleet. Commander Zarek immediately turned. Withdraw? From humans? Kale remained calm. I don't understand what they're planning. And that alone concerns me. Zarek laughed. Fear has clouded your judgment. They've done nothing. Kale answered without raising his voice. Exactly. They've done nothing. And that worries me more than any weapon. The countdown reached. 5 o'clock. 5 minutes remained. Across the Dominion fleet, over 200,000 warships powered their weapons. Planet killer cannons began charging. Orbital bombardment platforms locked onto Earth's continents. Millions of soldiers entered drop ships. The greatest invasion force in galactic history. Prepared to move. Earth responded by doing absolutely nothing. Traffic lights continued changing. Civilian aircraft continued flying. Fishing boats crossed the oceans. Families ate dinner. Children played in parks. Commander Zarek couldn't understand it. Were these people insane? They know we're here. Kale quietly whispered, "Oh, they know." 3 o'clock. 3 minutes. A communications officer suddenly stood. "My Emperor. We've intercepted human military traffic." The bridge became alert. "Play it." A human voice filled the room. Checkpoint 7 confirmed. Another voice answered. "Maintain position." Another. "Await 0 hour." That was all. No panic. No shouting. Only discipline. The channel closed. Commander Zarek smiled. "They're preparing to surrender." Kale slowly shook his head. "No. Soldiers don't sound like that. When they're about to surrender." Inside Earth's underground command center, one by one, human commanders reported in. First Fleet ready. Atlantic Defense ready. Lunar Command ready. Mars Group ready. Deep Space Division ready. Hayes simply nodded after every report. No speeches. No dramatic orders. Everything had already been planned. Years ago, a young communications officer quietly asked, "Sir, do you think they'll understand? What happens next?" Hayes looked toward the holographic image of the Dominion fleet. "No. They've spent 12,000 years winning the same war. They've never had to fight. Humans." 1 o'clock. 1 minute remained. The Imperial fleet erupted with activity. Weapons reached full power. Targeting systems locked onto Earth. Every officer stood ready. Commander Zarek smiled confidently. History repeats itself. They'll beg. In the final seconds. 0:30. Still nothing. Not a single transmission. The Emperor frowned. 0:20. The tactical room felt colder. Several officers nervously looked toward Kale. He wasn't watching Earth anymore. He was watching the darkness behind the fleet. 0:10. 10. 7. 6. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. The countdown ended. Every officer expected alarms. Explosions. Panic. Instead, absolute silence. Commander Zarek laughed. "They've frozen." The Emperor slowly raised one hand. "Fire." Before the order could be transmitted, every light on the flagship suddenly went dark. The bridge disappeared into complete blackness. Gasps echoed through the room. Emergency systems failed. Weapons shut down. Targeting computers vanished. Every screen became empty. For exactly 3 seconds. When the lights returned, the tactical map was no longer the same. Thousands of new symbols surrounded the Dominion fleet. Not hundreds. Not thousands. Hundreds of thousands. Every direction. Above. Below. Ahead. Behind. The officers stared in horror. Where did they come from? They weren't there. They couldn't have jumped inside the system. A sensor officer's hands shook violently. "My Emperor. I can't count them." The computer kept updating. 250,000, 310,000, 427,000. The numbers refused to stop climbing. Commander Zarek shouted, "Impossible. Our sensors never detected them." Kale whispered the answer. "They didn't arrive. They were already here." Fleet Marshal Hayes calmly looked across his command center. The entire room remained silent. No cheering. No celebration. Only professionalism. He finally spoke 4 simple words. "Operation Silent Shield has begun." Immediately, Across the solar system, asteroids split open. Frozen moons unfolded. Derelict mining stations came alive. What the Dominion believed were rocks were actually hidden shipyards. What they believed were abandoned satellites were weapons platforms. What they believed was empty space had been Earth's fortress all along. The 50,000 visible warships had never been the fleet. They had been the invitation. Back aboard the Imperial flagship, every warning alarm activated at once. Unknown vessels surrounding fleet. Hyperlane exit blocked. Retreat routes denied. Commander Zarek took one step backward. His voice trembled. "My Emperor! We're trapped." Vaktheron stared silently at the overwhelming tactical display. For the first time in 12,000 years, the Emperor of Silence had no words. No one moved. No one spoke. The tactical display was completely covered in human fleet markers. Every escape route, gone. Every attack vector, blocked. For the first time in 12,000 years, the Sarn Dominion was surrounded. Commander Zarek finally found his voice. This isn't possible. We scanned this system for 6 months. There was nothing here. Admiral Kale answered quietly. There was never nothing. There was only what they wanted us to see. Across the bridge, fear began spreading. Not because of the size of the human fleet, but because of one terrifying realization. If humanity had hidden this much, what else were they hiding? Emperor Vaktheron slowly stepped toward the command throne. His face remained calm. He had ruled an empire for centuries. He would not panic now. Open a channel. Seconds later, the connection reached Earth. The Emperor spoke first. You deceived us. For the first time, a different human voice answered. Older. Confident. This isn't deception. It's preparation. Vaktheron's eyes narrowed. You built an invisible fortress. The human replied. No. We built a home. And we protect our home. The channel closed. Without waiting for the Emperor's response, Commander Zarek slammed both fists onto the console. They keep ending the conversation. Vaktheron remained silent. Deep inside, he understood why. Humans didn't need to prove anything anymore. Their actions had already spoken. Suddenly, another alarm echoed through the flagship. Warning! Hyperdrive failure. Every officer looked toward engineering. An engineer shouted, "We can't activate the jump engines." Commander Zarek froze. What? They're fully powered. The engineer swallowed. They are. But space itself has become unstable. Kale looked at the tactical map. Then he understood. The gravitational distortions. They weren't ships. They were generators. Far beyond Saturn, gigantic structures slowly emerged from the darkness. Each one was larger than a moon. Massive rings rotated around glowing blue cores. Thousands of smaller human vessels protected them. One officer whispered, "What are those?" Fleet Marshal Hayes answered from Earth's command center. Anchors. The giant structures released invisible waves across the solar system. Every hyperspace lane collapsed. Every jump corridor disappeared. No fleet could leave. The Dominion had invaded a prison, built for invaders. Commander Zarek looked horrified. They trapped an entire armada. Before the battle even started. Kale nodded. They never planned to chase us. They planned to make sure we couldn't run. The Emperor slowly closed his eyes. He had underestimated humanity. Not their weapons. Their thinking. Every previous civilization had fought battles. Humans had prepared the battlefield itself. A communications officer interrupted. My Emperor! We're receiving another transmission. Vaktheron nodded. The screen lit up. For the first time, a human appeared. Fleet Marshal Adrian Hayes. No crown. No armor. No decorations. Only a dark uniform with the symbol of Earth. He looked directly into the Emperor's eyes. You gave humanity 1 hour. So now, I'll give you 1 minute. The bridge became silent. Hayes continued. Leave our solar system. Or stay. And your empire will remember this day forever. Commander Zarek laughed. A bluff. They still haven't fired. Hayes looked at him. You mistake restraint for weakness. The transmission ended. Exactly then, the 60-second countdown appeared on every Dominion screen. 0:59, 0:58, 0:57. The roles had changed. Now, the Emperor was the one receiving an ultimatum. Commander Zarek shouted, "My Emperor! We still outnumber them in heavy battleships. We can break through." Vaktheron looked toward Kale. What do you think? Kale answered honestly. If we attack, we may destroy thousands. But we'll lose millions. And if humanity has another surprise, we lose everything. Zarek refused to accept it. They're only humans. Kale stared directly at him. No, they're defenders. And defenders always fight differently. The countdown continued. 0:30. Every Dominion captain waited. No one fired. No one moved. For the first time, the greatest military in the galaxy was waiting for someone else's decision. Without permission, Commander Zarek acted. No more waiting. Fire the planet breaker. One massive cannon turned toward Earth. Energy flooded into its barrel. Kale's eyes widened. Stop. It's a trap. Too late. The weapon fired. A beam brighter than a star raced toward Earth. For less than 1 second, it looked unstoppable. The impossible happened. The beam simply, it curved harmlessly away from Earth and vanished into empty space. Every officer stood frozen. The planet breaker, the weapon that had destroyed hundreds of worlds, had failed. A quiet voice came through every speaker. Gravity shield online. Before anyone could react, every human warship activated at once. Hundreds of thousands of blue lights ignited across the darkness. The solar system itself seemed to awaken. Not one weapon fired. Not yet. Humanity didn't need to. The message was already clear. We could have destroyed you. We chose not to. Fleet Marshal Hayes looked across his command center. Final warning delivered. He calmly folded his hands behind his back. If the Emperor is wise, he'll leave. But if his pride is stronger than his wisdom, Phase 6 begins. Far across the battlefield, Emperor Vaktheron slowly rose from his throne. For the first time in centuries, he questioned his own certainty. The final decision would determine the fate of the galaxy. The solar system became completely silent. Hundreds of thousands of human warships floated in perfect formation. Not one fired. Not one moved. Every weapon remained locked, but inactive. The Dominion had expected rage. Instead, humanity showed discipline. The Emperor stared at the impossible sight. Every direction was filled with human vessels. Every retreat route was sealed. Every tactical simulation returned the same result. Defeat, 99.97%. Commander Zarek refused to believe it. There must be a way. There is always a way. The fleet's master strategist shook his head. We've run the calculations 17 times. The answer never changes. If this battle begins, the Dominion dies here. Silence returned. The 1-minute countdown continued. 0:18. The Emperor slowly walked toward the observation window. Below him, Earth continued turning peacefully. The oceans sparkled. Clouds drifted across the continents. Billions of people continued living their lives. Not because they didn't know war was coming, but because they trusted those standing between them and the enemy. Vaktheron quietly whispered, "They're not afraid." Kale answered, "No, my Emperor. They simply refuse to live in fear." 0:10. Across every human flagship, Fleet Marshal Adrian Hayes gave his final order. Maintain formation. Do not fire unless they fire first. A young captain looked surprised. "Sir, we have them surrounded. We can destroy the Dominion forever." Hayes slowly looked at him. And tomorrow, another empire would rise. The young captain remained silent. Hayes continued, Our mission isn't revenge. Our mission is to make sure no one ever points a weapon at Earth again. 05. Commander Zarek suddenly drew his sidearm. This is madness. We are the Sarn Dominion. We do not retreat. He reached for the firing controls. Before he could touch them, the Emperor caught his wrist. Everyone froze. Vaktheron looked directly into Zarek's eyes. You still believe? This battle is about pride. He slowly lowered the commander's weapon. But humanity has shown us. It is about survival. Without another word, Imperial guards escorted Commander Zarek away from the bridge. He never resisted. For the first time in his life, even he understood. The war had already been lost. The countdown reached. Nothing happened. No explosions. No missiles. No lasers. Fleet Marshal Hayes calmly waited. A single transmission arrived. This is Emperor Vaktheron. The connection opened across every human flagship. The Emperor stood tall. Not as a conqueror, but as a ruler who had finally accepted the truth. The Sarn Dominion withdraws its claim on Earth. We acknowledge human sovereignty. We will leave your system immediately. The bridge remained silent. No officer argued. No one celebrated. They all knew. History had just changed. Fleet Marshal Hayes answered. Accepted. Our gravity anchors will open one safe corridor. You may leave. But hear this carefully. His voice became firmer. If another Dominion fleet enters this system, it will not receive an hour. It will not receive a warning. It will simply disappear. The transmission ended. Slowly, one section of the massive human blockade opened. A narrow corridor stretched toward deep space. Exactly wide enough for the Dominion fleet to escape. Not chase them. Not humiliate them. Simply let them go. The Emperor looked around his bridge. For the first time, he understood why humanity was different. Every empire he had conquered wanted victory. Humans wanted peace. But unlike everyone else, they were willing to become powerful enough to protect it. Hours later, the last Dominion warship disappeared into hyperspace. Earth had survived. Without firing a single shot. Weeks passed. The months. Across the galaxy, the story spread faster than light. At first, no one believed it. The Dominion retreated? Impossible. They never retreat. Then the sensor recordings were released. Every civilization watched the same images. The greatest armada in galactic history. Completely surrounded. Completely helpless. Without humanity firing first. The impossible had become history. Ambassadors from dozens of worlds arrived at Earth. Not to surrender, but to build alliances. Trade routes opened. Scientific knowledge was shared. Ancient enemies made peace. Because one lesson had reached every corner of the galaxy. If humanity could stop the Dominion, then no tyrant was invincible. 1 year later, a monument was built on Earth's moon. It wasn't a statue of a soldier or a warship. It was something much simpler. A giant clock. Its hands forever frozen. At the exact moment the Emperor's ultimatum ended. Beneath it, only one sentence was engraved. Freedom needs no permission. In his private chamber aboard the retreating flagship, Vaktheron stood alone. He looked one final time toward the distant blue planet. Then quietly spoke words no emperor before him had ever said. We came to conquer humanity. Instead, humanity conquered our arrogance. And from that day forward, every cadet in every military academy across the galaxy learned the same lesson before commanding a fleet. Never mistake human silence for surrender. Because when humanity says nothing, it usually means they've already won.